a monster, an emperor's fire, a king's war, all over one spice. Cinnamon sits in almost every kitchen today. A few dollars a jar, something you barely think about. But 2,000 years ago, this same spice was worth more than gold. And the people who sold it didn't just protect that value with soldiers or contracts. They protected it with a lie. One so elaborate, it fooled Europe for over 1,000 years. Almost nobody today knows what that lie actually was, or how far people went to keep it alive. Cinnamon came from the highlands of Sri Lanka and southern India, harvested from the inner bark of a small, unremarkable-looking tree. Arab traders controlled its route into the Mediterranean world for centuries, and they had every reason to keep its true source a secret. So they invented a monster. The Greek historian Herodotus recorded the story that cinnamon sticks were gathered from giant nests built by ferocious birds, high on impossible cliffs guarded by the creatures themselves. Traders even claimed collectors had to lure the birds away with huge chunks of meat, then wait for the nests to collapse under the weight. It was, of course, completely invented, but it worked. For over 1,000 years, nobody in Europe knew where cinnamon actually grew, and that ignorance was the entire business model. In Rome, that mystery only made cinnamon more desirable. Roman emperors burned it at funerals as the ultimate display of wealth. Emperor Nero reportedly burned a year's entire supply of the empire's cinnamon at his wife's funeral, not out of grief alone, but to prove exactly how much wealth he could afford to destroy. By some estimates, that single act of grief may have burned more wealth than most Romans would see in their entire lives. But almost nobody in Rome ever questioned where the spice actually came from. The lie had done its job for centuries. That changed only when a new kind of trader arrived, one with ships built for something the Arab merchants never expected, sailing directly to the source. In 1518, Portuguese explorers finally traced cinnamon to its true source, the island of Ceylon, modern-day Sri Lanka. The 1,000-year-old myth of the monster birds collapsed in an instant, replaced by a much simpler, much more brutal truth. There was no monster to defeat, just an island, and the people who already lived there. Duarte and his soldiers built a fort on the island's coast, and within decades seized control of the cinnamon trade by force. For the first time, a European power controlled the spice at its source, not just along its trade route. The secret was over, but the violence had just begun. But here's the part most versions of this story leave out. The island wasn't empty land waiting to be claimed. It had its own king, and he had no intention of giving up his cinnamon forests without a fight. For over a century, the interior kingdom of Kandy resisted every European power that tried to take the whole island. Portuguese, then Dutch, retreating into the mountains and striking back whenever they could. The Dutch drove out the Portuguese in 1658, but they never fully conquered Kandy either, instead settling for control of the coastline, where the cinnamon actually grew. Cinnamon groves were declared royal Dutch property. Harvesting without permission wasn't just illegal, it was punishable by death. An entire caste of people, the Salagama, were forced by law into cinnamon peeling as their hereditary occupation. One family's entire future decided the moment they were born. When the British took over in 1815, they did something the Dutch and Portuguese never dared. They broke their own monopoly. They planted cinnamon on plantations far beyond Ceylon, the Seychelles, Madagascar, the Caribbean, finally making it available and affordable to the wider world. And here's the twist almost nobody realizes today. Most of what's sold as cinnamon in supermarkets around the world isn't actually true cinnamon at all. It's a cheaper, closely related bark called cassia, grown in China and Indonesia, and it's what fills most grocery store jars today. True Ceylon cinnamon still costs far more, and most people have never even tasted it. Today, The tree that was once guarded with myths of monster birds and enforced with royal decrees grows on ordinary plantations across the world. The same spice that could once buy political favour and imperial power now costs less than a cup of coffee. And most people pouring it into their kitchen jar have no idea just how much blood, myth, and monopoly it took to get there. A bird that never existed once protected this bark better than any army ever could. And in the end, it took a ship, a fort, and 3 empires to prove the birds were never real at all.